why is Iran creating so much problems for Israel? What is the historical significance?
Netanyahu, they had mentioned 75 years ago when they were given this land, it was a desolate land that they have created with their blood and sweat.
Why does the United States support Israel so much?
No option. United States has to support Israel, all said and done. US wants to test their own weapon systems. Economy is driven by defense industry to a huge extent. Policy is to continue the war till the time it reaches an objective.
Do you see this regional war turning into a World War III kind of scenario? In today's special episode, we are revisiting the moment that has left the world in a shock and uncertainty. Exactly 1 year after the first attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7, 2023, the conflict has evolved into a regional war that now has Israel and Iran on opposite sides with global superpowers closely involved. How did such a massive intelligence failure happen in the first place? And what are the implications on the escalating crisis? Joining us today is Brigadier Rajiv Williams, who will share his insights into the current situation. We'll delve into how this conflict spirals into a full-scale World War III, Israel's options for retaliation, the likelihood of US intervention, and where Russia, China, and Pakistan stand. We'll also explore the stance of the Arab world, which find itself in a complex web of alliances, and discuss the far-reaching implications for India. This episode promises to uncover the critical questions everyone is asking. Are we on the brink of a global conflict? And what does the escalating crisis mean for the future of international relations and stability? So, stay tuned as we delve into this intense discussion. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I just wanted to take a quick moment. We looked at our analytics and noticed that 93% of you who watch our videos regularly aren't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying our content and want us to keep going with more insightful conversation, we'd really appreciate if you could take just a second to subscribe. It might seem like a small action, but it goes a long way in helping us grow and bringing even more amazing content your way. Thanks for your support. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video. Brigadier Rajiv Williams, welcome to Dive for Publisher.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Shivam. So nice to be here to talk to you.
Our first conversation was brilliant as well. We spoke about the Kargil war and our learnings and the drawbacks. Today's conversation is going to be about the war in West Asia, the conflict that we are seeing. It all started 1 year ago when Hamas attacked Israel out of a surprise. Today is the 7th of October 2024. 1 year ago is what that happened. And we've seen it prolonged for a year now, and the dynamics have changed. But before we talk about the current situation, let us talk about 7th October 2023.
Shivam, having this podcast is a very important day. Important in the sense that it's been a year down the line. And before I start responding to your question, I think it's important for me to also remember those, especially the soldiers who were killed in action on 7th of October 2023. I salute the brave hearts, and I'm talking about the soldiers who, in line of duty, were killed. Killed because of the fallacy of the Israel Defense Forces, of their overconfidence that nobody can hit them, nobody can touch them. And I salute those martyrs, and of course pray for the dead who were killed, brutally murdered by the onslaught which had taken place with Hamas on 7th of October, early morning. So to pause here, I would like to just be surprised. I was surprised myself as to why IDF, one of the best of the best forces in the world, was totally at sea and did not anticipate that the attack is likely to come in that very geography where it did come. And I think it was a bit of, not a bit, but just overconfidence on the part of the hierarchy, of the chief of the Israeli Defense Forces, and all his coterie around him, despite the fact that they were given information almost 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance, few days in advance, the changes that were taking place from across the supposedly impregnable line of control, which they were actually working on, this fencing that was so being relied upon. They said nobody can breach it. And therefore, the information that was fed by who? Fed by those young girls who were part of that organization, Pit Niyot. That was the organization that was responsible to be deployed in the Nahal Oz post, the closest post around between the border of Israel and Gaza. Now, if in that post there were only all women in this particular unit of Tatzpetniot, and they were only given the responsibility of obtaining information, they were not trained for war. They didn't have arms with them. But they were deployed there as part of the Israeli Defense Forces only to pick up whatever information was being acquired by their various agencies. That is, in this case, the cameras that were deployed along the fencing, the balloon that was there in the operation, supposedly to be operational. They were picked up that information and given to the seniors. They were not sure where that information was going, but obviously it was going to the right quarters. So there was no reason for IDF to have been at sea when this thing had taken place. And there were such changes in the design and the pattern of the locals from across, which they were reporting. They saw that the farmers were coming up to the borders. The sheep, the cattle was coming up to the border, which had not happened before. They were coming and placing some devices over there close to their side of the fencing, which was not seen before. These are the early indicators, which was happening right across, and the reports were coming in to the IDF, and they were saying that nothing is really important. And important in the sense for Israel. Israel has got a very small territory. It's only got 22,145 square kilometers area. Square kilometers the area. 450 square kilometers by 150 kilometers. That's there. They don't have that buffer zone. They don't have that luxury of having some open space. So obviously, every bit of that territory has to be guarded, and that's where the posts were deployed. So I'm giving you just one of this, and this post is so important. It had all the high technology equipment, and it had all the facilities of security. But that security was based on, again, too much of technology. And when the initial onslaught had taken place at around 11 o'clock on the 7th a year ago, maybe around this time, a little later as far as the Israeli time zone is concerned, the lights had gone off of that post, and everything was dependent on the lights. Or the locking security systems were dependent on that light. When the light was taken off that, they were vulnerable, and that's what actually happened, and they lost 60 women and men in that post. The counter also was only one infantry unit, which was responsible for the entire area of the Golani Brigade. So there's so much to talk about the surprise element, which is critical for any force, and it has got very important relevance for us also.
So what would you say is the learning for any country from this particular attack?
I mean, why any country? For India itself. I mean, let's take what happened in Galwan or the China piece. We have to be careful. The inputs that are coming have to be taken very seriously. And I'm talking about India itself, the Indian Army, the Indian Defense Forces. I'm sure they've got various tools to take care of these kind of surprises. Yet we are surprised. Kargil we spoke about Kargil. Why were we surprised? Wasn't the information available? It was being made available, and yet people were not acting. So it happens in every country like that, I presume. I can speak for India, and I'm speaking now from Israel Defense Forces. The lackadaisical approach on the responses that were given. The equipment wasn't functional. That balloon on the 7th or 6th of October was not functional. They were told, don't worry about it, nothing is happening. Their patrolling activities were delayed. Nothing is happening, so don't worry. If you go at 5 in the morning, you can go a little later. So those are the things, if you mesh it with the information that is coming to you, and if you take it seriously, then I think you are more careful. And if you are more careful, then you will not get surprised. And if you're not going to get surprised, your defense is going to be strong, your troops are going to be motivated, and they will never feel let down.
We've come a long way since that 1 year
Absolutely.
situation. So the conflict has brewed much further. North of Israel in Lebanon, and also Iran is also a major part of the conflict. Let's talk about a little bit more about the major dynamics in West Asia at the moment, sir.
Lots of things have taken place in the last 1 year. The 7th of October was 1,200 approximately were killed, civilians and 300 odd the forces. And in this 1 year, as per the report that has come from the health ministry of Hamas, controlled health ministry, 41,000 Palestinians have been killed in the last 1 year. It's a large number. Obviously, if it is Hamas or Hezbollah, they're being controlled by Iran. They're being supported by Iran. Iran calls itself as an axis of resistance, where it is creating the proxy war elements to fight Israel and to spread this kind of a thought process across. So that is why recently Lebanon has come into being. Though, of course, nitpicks were taking place right from the last 1 year of Hezbollah also firing into Israel. But it was contained. The responses were, of course, almost immediate, but they were contained. But the recent killings since the last 6 months, with the initial killing, of course, of the political leader itself, who was killed in Tehran,
The Hamas leader.
Hanai. He was a political guy and of Hamas, of Hezbollah. And when he was killed inside Tehran, that's the time Iran said we have to retaliate, we have to work on it and come up with some. Before that, Qaidiat was killed, again a Hamas leader. And the recent one of Nasrallah in Beirut, when he was killed. That's the time when Khomeini said, okay, now enough is enough, we have to retaliate. And he had warned them. And I was watching the television, and I'm giving you information which is all open source information. He had warned that he's going to be launching the strike. Okay, warning was earlier also, in April also. When
It was
launched.
expected.
It was expected. But I remember on the day, Tuesday afternoon when we were watching the news, everybody was talking, they are going to strike. Because they had already seen from the information available that the weapon systems of Iran were being primed. And once that was being primed, obviously the next thing will be that they will be targeting who? Targeting Israel. Targeting Israel after Hassan Nasrallah was killed, they said we have to take action because they have to also show themselves as remaining as the important axis of resistance, which they're controlling Hamas, Hezbollah, and many other smaller proxy elements which they have created.
True. So before we speak about the current situation, I would want you to tell me a little more about the why is Iran creating so much problems for Israel? What is the historical significance? Is it religious? Is it something else?
Well,
And
Jews were brought by God in Genesis in the Bible from Egypt and brought to this land which was God had promised. And 40 years it took to reach over there for various reasons. They were promised that whoever respects and loves the Jews will be respected. And whoever curses them will be cursed. And this is given in the book of Genesis, this is given in the book of Jeremiah, of the Bible itself. That's the Christian part of it. The Christology and the Jewish religion part of it. And then came, of course, you must have heard the recent speech of the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, he had mentioned 75 years ago when they were given this land, it was a desolate land and they have created with their blood and sweat and created this as a green piece to live and to have security. All the nations were against them. They have lived through the time of Pharaoh. They've lived through the times of the Arab world being against them when they got their territory by the United Nations or a deserted area. Today is green. They've got that strength in them, and they said that, of course, it's a Muslim, Jewish, Christian divide. But yet, at the same time, Iran is one country which is obviously the complete Islamic state. And they have got angst against any other faith, especially Christians, especially the Jews. And that's the religious part which ignites even the smallest thing that happens in Iran against these nations. Iraq was somewhat similar, is somewhat similar. But they have been targeted by the US, targeted by Israel, and continue to be targeted to make sure that their boundaries are limited and they don't expand. So one is the faith, and the second thing is the real strength of the nation states, which are, of course, making sure that Iran does not go beyond borders. And I think there's lots to talk about it. There's so much that relevance as far as oil is concerned, as far as the economy is concerned. Everything, the world is dependent on them in many ways. And why is China, why is Russia still quiet? Why is China not speaking up? Europe, of course, has been totally supporting Israel, except for France, which, of course, recently Macron said that, that the time for embargo of weapon systems to Israel. And that's being challenged and countered. So, I'm just saying there's so much that is happening, making this area a regional conflict, which is visible.
Since you just mentioned the religious aspect of the situation in West Asia, I also want to bring to your notice about why does the United States support Israel so much?
It's got no options. United States has to support Israel, all said and done. Despite the fact, because the Jews are collated there, the intelligentsia in the US is basically Jewish. The economy is run by the Jews in many parts of the world, especially the US.
So is the political system.
And the political system also obviously runs along this very premise. The premise of the fact that Israel, though small, is very important to both US and to other parts of Europe. So what is religion draws them together. But this point of the Jews is being spread all over the world, especially the US and Europe. And secondly, Israel has got the capability, the capacity to decapacitate some of the other nation states intelligently, and of course the fact that technology-wise they're far advanced. Advanced to the sense that these Iron Dome, which I'll be speaking to you about a little later when we talk about the launch part, is a creation of brilliant creation. It has been exposed recently. They've been talking about it, but they're being tested. The weapons are being tested also. The weapons of the missiles that have been launched, which we can speak a little later about, have been supplied by somebody, obviously Russia. Some other states are supplying them and wanting to test it. Similarly, US. US wants to test their own weapon systems. Economy is driven by defense industry to a huge extent.
True.
And if that be so, then the weapons have to be tested. The weapons have to be checked. And nothing like checking during the battle itself, in war. So America wants, of course, US, Israel as a very important partner. And they've been supporting them even in this recent attack. It is the support of the US. It is the support of some of the other European countries, along with Israel, who could make sure that those missiles, 200 of them, 180 of them that were launched on Tuesday, did not create that kind of an impact in Israel.
But did Iran know that it won't have an impact? It was just a test, according to them.
See, a good question, because they've already done this in April. 300 missiles they had launched in April. And most of the missiles were taken care of by the dome of Israel. So the efficacy was not there. Didn't have any impact. But this weapon system is Fatah. It's a different weapon system. It's a missile which has a range of 2,500 kilometers.
Intercontinental ballistic missile.
It is the intercontinental ballistic missile. And in addition to that, of course, they have used the other cruise missiles, they've used the other missiles. So they've been able to penetrate the dome. But the counters, after all, technology-wise, the first missile, counter missile, like earlier you said, the Patriots, etc., the US was to be giving, but that was short range. But this is Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, which have got that capacity to decapacitate the missiles at ranges beyond the Earth's atmosphere. And most of them were destroyed. And what is this Arrow weapon system? Arrow weapon system, it launches a warhead which hits the missile, the oncoming missile, beyond the Earth's atmosphere. So much before it comes to those target locations, to the habitated areas of Israel, it is destroyed. And even the Al-Fatahs and the others which were managed to penetrate, then came, of course, the next lot is the David Sling. The David Sling missile system is a new missile system again, taking care of the ranges up to 200 kilometers. And mind you, the attraction of this kind of testing that's been done over some years, how is the missile system, the air defense weapon systems of Israel been so attracted to as far as the economy is concerned, economy of the country is concerned? Because recently you must have heard, end of September, it's the 28th, I think, September, Germany has come into a contract with Israel to supply them with almost $4 billion worth of Arrow 3. And similar things, of course, many other countries will be, of course. So economy is also being generated by these weapon systems.
True. So I would stop you here and give you a perspective that I have.
Yep.
There could be two reasons of this current attack by Iran on Israel. Tell me if I'm wrong or need to change my perspective. One is that they had to retaliate after Israel killed the Hamas and Hezbollah leader in Iran itself. So they had to do some retaliation to have some faith in Iran.
Yep.
That's one point.
Absolutely.
Another is to test their defense system, to create more attacks by all three fronts, being by Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, because it's a 3-4 front war I see right now. So there are two ways to look at it. One is that Iran doesn't want it to escalate, and it was just a crossfire key. Listen, I've done this, let's not go further. The other is to just test their defense system. Do you think it's a correct thought process?
See, one is, if you see last Friday, when Khomeini has come in the open for the prayers. His coming is trying to demonstrate that we will do whatever it takes to retaliate in case our interests are involved. He has done this after the killing of Nasrullah. Before that, he appeared in 2020. 2020 again, when Qasriya or somebody was killed, Hamas leader. And before that, he came in 2012. So there's a gap of 8 years, 4 years, 5 years. He doesn't come in the open public. But when he comes, he is speaking. He's speaking the fact that we as a country, as a state, will retaliate when our interests are affected. But that's not enough. It has to also, besides, of course, keeping the mass with him, also to say that, as axis of resistance champions, we have to support Hamas, we've got to support the other terrorist organization, including Hezbollah, and we will support them in different formats, besides funding them, besides giving them the arms and training, by actually launching the missiles. Tested missiles or untested missiles. The Al-Fatah was untested, and that was launched last Tuesday against Israel. So there are both these aspects which have to be taken care of. One is to make sure that they remain the champions of the proxy war, that they are, so as to say, proxy war, or proxy elements that they are creating to fight Israel and to go other places too. They are supporting Houthis too. Basically what? Basically to make sure to inform them that we will not abandon you. We will be with you. You go and target. You carry on targeting. The second thing, of course, is that they are being supplied arms from some country, and obviously, I suppose, is Russia, obviously, to test bed those new systems like the one that they fired, the Fatah. And if they get success, how can we adjust, reorganize, reorientate from an ICBM to an MRBM or to any other weapon system of short range? To try and counter the laser weapon system which Russia has, which Israel has. The laser guided weapon system, which is much shorter range.
True.
But it is a cheaper variety. $2 it costs.
The next question arises that how is Israel going to retaliate? Because they will retaliate for sure. But how and where would they retaliate to is the question. What, according to you, would be their response?
Well, obviously, when Iran has launched this operation, or called Operation Promise 2, that was the name of the operation of launching these missiles. And there is obviously a riposte, which is already, you can see Israel having taken in Lebanon. They said they will not target Beirut, but they have targeted Beirut. They have got hold of even the number 2 after the killing of Nasrallah. The next person who was supposed to be in line to take over as the head of Hamas, of Hezbollah, perhaps has also been knocked off because there have been no communications after the strike which had taken place soon after this Op Promise 2 was launched against Israel. So the operations obviously are going to be enlarged. My view, of course, is that there will be the operation in southern Lebanon up to Litani River, when he's going to be clearing up all possible weapon emplacements and weapon platforms in that particular area, because those are the threatening areas of targeting northern Israel. So he has to push the Hamas, push the Hezbollah out from this particular area. At least. He's definitely going to target and keep targeting the leadership of Hezbollah, of Hamas. And their intelligence, Mossad is the best. There is no doubt in my mind that they would already have been operating both in Gaza and in Lebanon and in Iran for many, many months before they've launched these operations. So, Iran is concerned. They have also threatened that in case Israel retaliates, they will also start retaliating. Now let's just see the targets in Iran itself. What are the options that Israel has in Iran? One is oil facilities, which are in the open, which are well documented, and they know the place. And the second one is the nuclear. Weapon systems which are embedded many meters below the surface of the earth. In the mountains, it is so difficult. What target can they actually hit as far as their nuclear facilities are concerned? Nuclear facilities, if they are so deep inside, they have to be monitored even at the end of, in location. Just your hard-hitting weapon system that you have, the delivery mechanisms, that is your aircraft, which can go and bomb and they'll have the technology of reaching a target. But the expert comments or expert fallout thereafter will only be given by people who are in location. What is the damage that has been done? Now coming to the nuclear ones first. Nuclear weapon systems are more of a threat in being. They are the most potent weapon systems till they're not used. Once they are used, that threat in being of deterrence is gone. And that's one thing which I think we all understand, that nuclear weapons are more of a deterrence rather than being targeted at this stage.
True.
When the world is having a very difficult economic situation, the world over is tough. And it is based on, as of now, oil. And oil is dependent a lot on what Iran is giving, both to Russia, or whether it's to the Asian countries, or whether it's towards the European markets. Economy is controlled hugely by that. So would Israel target the oil facilities? Would Israel target the nuclear facilities? Or would Israel definitely have some actions that are being taken like it was taken in 31st of July or 30th of July when they knocked off that political leader, Hamas political leader in Tehran? Those are the activities I think Iran is going to be faced with as targets, including they will be trying the leadership of Iran. Those are the targets. So my long and short, as far as Iran is concerned, is they will target the leadership rather than going in for a facility of either the nuclear or going in for even the oil. Coming to the nearer border of Israel, whether it's South Lebanon, whether it's Syria, or whether it's to do with Gaza, there is a lot of Israelis living in these areas. And they are definitely very keen to make sure that those Israelis living in those areas are not targeted by either the Hamas or the Hezbollahs. And also make sure that the areas that are occupied by these two proxies of Iran are far away so that they can't create a sensible damage to Israel in the northern Israel border or the western Israel. That's my take.
Right. So some people also speculate or have a narrative, for that matter, that Netanyahu is pushing for this war because there's a lot of instability political-wise in Israel, and there's a lot of disliking of the leader in Israel. What is your take on that, sir?
My take is somewhat in sync in what you have mentioned. If there is no war, the political threat on the Prime Minister is huge. As it is, he's under, of course, a lot of pressure to get the hostages released. So he has that tool of making sure the war continues till its logical conclusion of what I've mentioned to you, of pushing back these elements beyond borders, closer to Israel. As far as many other legal challenges that are being faced by the Prime Minister Netanyahu, also need to be kept at bay till the time these objectives, political objectives, are achieved. And that's why I'm saying Israel must have a political objective. They are not stated, they're just going on and on. You have to have a political objective. That my objective, let's take in southern Lebanon, is a politically beat it. And then I don't intend staying there because of UN Resolution 1701, of making sure that is being taken care of by the UN FIL, that is the UN International Force in Lebanon. And they, and of course, Lebanese troops will monitor those areas for which 1701 of the Security Council resolution was prepared. And then they will be in sync with the UN forces. So today they are saying that UN is basically a lame duck. They've got no role to play. They've even refused Guterres, the Secretary General, to even come to Israel.
He was banned.
Well, he was banned basically because he did not condemn the attack on Iran, by Iran. But the next day he has condemned. But thereafter they have still in the position that they have not permitted him to enter Israel. Right? So I think Prime Minister Netanyahu's policy is to continue the war till the time he reaches an objective. That objective needs to be stated. That objective needs to be told to the world. That yes, there is an end line to the conflict.
Sure.
But if I don't give that end line, even to my own coterie, then there is, what is your objective?
Right.
Is the question. Is it only to keep the war going so that you are protected politically? And so many charges against you financially are also kept at bay. So be clear.
So a lot of people are comparing the two defense forces of Iran and Israel. But in 21st century, do you think the number of forces are relevant, or it's a different war game now? Because Iran definitely has more numbers in terms of their soldiers, their tank power, and etc. But in today's time, is this one of these important?
Let's be honest. As far as the manpower is concerned, it's not only a question of numbers, it's a question of quality versus quantity. I don't think that is Iranian military has got that capability of many other armies in the world. Leadership-wise or operationalizing
True.
their activities. If they don't have that capacity, it's obviously translated through the proxies that they are raising and supporting. That is why Iran is still considered as a resistance of change.
True.
It is creating these proxies to make sure that there is a simmering tensions around the areas where Iran wants to create those tensions.
Plus, in today's time, there's more chances of an air warfare in terms of drones or missiles or aircrafts.
There is no doubt in that. That the missile, that's why they've gone to this Fatah too. That missile is a deadly missile, intercontinental ballistic missile, which has been launched and demonstrated. But Israel also, with its Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, have also demonstrated the counter and been able to destroy most of these beyond the Earth's atmosphere.
Plus, Israel's air power is supported by the US, which have the best quality aircraft, the fifth generation as well.
And of course, the deployment of their fleet in the Mediterranean to make sure that all these issues are taken care of so that Israel is protected. So there is a maneuverability that is taking place in terms of the coalition. May not be declared coalition, but the coalition between US, UK and Israel, no doubt, very strong. And the coalition of Iran means what? Means the proxies that they've created, means that on the quiet support from Russia, which is already embroiled into Ukraine, and China is lying low. Why? China can't speak up because their interests are in the Middle East, in North Africa, and in the Africa subcontinent. That's where a lot of inflow of economy is taking place for China.
And the West as well.
And the West, but I'm saying that circling and being around Israel, Israel is very particular about North Africa. They've got good relationships. The Abraham Accord you take.
And you don't see Russia joining this war because they are involved in their own conflict at the moment.
Well, obviously, they are involved in that particular area of Ukraine and not to a happy situation in other parts. But at the same time, as far as the voice is concerned, needs to be heard. They have not really commented on this conflict at all.
Right. So what about Pakistan? There's a high chance of Pakistan being involved in this conflict as well.
I thought I'll touch upon Pakistan once we talk about India. India's reaction to this particular attack by Iran on Israel.
Then we'll wait for Pakistan. Let's talk about the Saudi world, the Arab world. What standards do they have?
The Gulf region, which is largely controlled by Saudi money and resources, has been rather quiet also in this front because they want to improve relations with the Western world. And America has definitely a very strong place now for economic interests with Saudi Arabia. There are other players who are wanting to join us. That's why they're conversing of finding a solution, including Qatar, Egypt. They're wanting to find a solution. And America has got the keys in their hand of finding their solution. If they want, I'm sure they can find a solution and put a stop to it. Whether they put a stop just before the elections or whether it'll go post-elections. But I'm very sure that it is the United States of America and them alone who can really control the war between Israel and Iran to not escalate to a Middle Eastern war beyond the conflict that we're talking about.
Now let's come to India, sir. What is our stand, Prime Minister Modi's stand in this war? Because we have been showing our respects to the Palestinian as well. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with the Palestine leader.
See, India's stand right from the beginning has been that of neutrality. Palestinians have a very important place in India's foreign policy. And they have been saying that they should be giving a conversation as far as the land is concerned. But they cannot antagonize either Iran or Israel. Antagonize in the sense for their own personal interests, for economic interests, for technological interests, because Israel has got all the technology which India is wanting. So it cannot go against what Israel, and they've opened up relations with Israel the last 10, 15 years, right? Earlier there was no relationship of matter to Israel, but in the last 15 years, for every field, whether it's to do with weapons, or whether it's to do with energy, or whether it is to do with agriculture. So there is an interest which, of course, India has to make sure that it does not go beyond that red line as far as Israel is concerned. Iran obviously has been an ally for many years. Iran is where there is a lot of discussions which go around not only the economic front, but on the strategic level of beyond economy, of making sure the ports are available, are limited, and yet they're available to the Indian. Warships to visit, trade to continue, and for making sure that China does not come into play, because there is Pakistan sitting in between.
The Chabahar port.
The Chabahar port is there. And you got to understand that if you antagonize Iran, then the Shia community and, of course, the Pakistan community, they definitely get together. They become closer. They get all the support that is required from Iran, which India does not want Pakistan to step up its relationship with Iran. So you have to be careful on that front.
Yeah, the Shia community in India, also in Kashmir,
Well,
primarily, are pro-Iranians.
See, Shia community comparatively to Kashmir is less, right, as compared to Sunni.
Yeah, it's 10% more.
It's less because it's basically Kargil area. It's a Shia community. As far as Kashmir is concerned, the percentage is much lower. So that's not of concern as far as India is concerned. But what is of concern is Pakistan. Pakistan becoming closer to the Middle East, to the Gulf, through Iran as one of the major players, is not a good thing to do as far as India is concerned. So they have to balance the act. The second thing is that as far as Lebanon is concerned, India has a battalion there. As part of the UN mission of the UNFL force, it's got about 800 men there, which are not going to be evacuating or moving out because of Israel's attack in southern Lebanon. So they've got to make sure to protect them also. It's important that you don't antagonize Israel to such an extent where they continue bashing the UN forces also who are deployed, and they've asked them to move out. And a UNFL has said that they're not moving out, they're going to remain in their posts, including the Indian contingent.
So I want to bring your notice to Pakistan. You said Pakistan might get involved in support of Iran. I don't see that happening because the support that US gives them financially, they won't want to risk their financial support coming from the US because they've been giving so much funds to Pakistan, and that this is when they need to support them.
Well, the US has changed its stance to a great extent, with India relationships with US improving hugely. Pakistan being part of the Rim country controls the region. And they are obviously a very good platform for entries into China or into Russia. The check and balances are there. That's why US needs Pakistan, all said and done. Financially is not as much as it was in the yesteryears. But obviously, Iran is still close to Pakistan. And they have to get that support from them. They have to keep them in mind, also to keep a check in India. So Pakistan's strategy is going to be a little different to what you are suggesting of the US-Pakistan corridor being improved. Their relationship with China will remain strong till the CPEC becomes really operational. And secondly, of course, they will need support from the US. Limited support because China won't let them allow them to get them too much support. So Pakistan is a bit of a quandary, and India has to play its cards well. It's playing its cards pretty okay, but at the same time, their positioning of being a little focused on the regional conflict of South Asia should remain a focus more important than going for a global power. We keep talking, we don't have the global capabilities, we need to have technology, weapon systems which will reach out to the levels that are expected for a global perception. But I personally feel, and that may be for the next 30 years at least, let us be regionally strong. Let us talk languages which will be impactful as far as China is concerned, as far as Pakistan is concerned, as far as Bangladesh is concerned, as far as Nepal is concerned, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. None of our relationships are good now. Why? Focus on your immediate neighbors. They are a threatened being. Then we talk about the larger area. And if we are strong enough, we must follow that Ekadana principle of being strong and demonstrate when required, otherwise just keep quiet. Let's build our capacities. Thank you.
Final question for today, sir. Do you see this regional war turning into a World War III kind of scenario?
I think if I will, whether I'm even the right person to respond to that, because I don't have all the data available of a World War III economics. Participation and taking that on as a challenge so close to your own country needs to be looked with a Nelson's eye. And it's not only for India, it's for all countries around the world. Can they afford a world war? Can they afford other countries to participate in a localized activity which is going on to a world war economy? Dynamics? I don't think we are anywhere near a World War III. A World War III is going to be a nuclear weapon system war. And we are not in a position to go for a nuclear war in this part of the world. Because what are you going to achieve? You're going to achieve nothing except for destruction. You're going to achieve nothing than going back many thousands of years.
True.
And therefore, I feel it is going to be a support which will continue to be given to Israel, a support which will be continued to be given to Iran. And of course, there is Iraq, there is the Gulf complete, Saudi Arabia, there are the Houthis problems. Yemen has to be sorted out. So the proxies of various countries will become not a mainstay, but an irritant stay for many years. To target that, you need coalitions. You need regional coalitions as much as the international coalitions. So I don't think it is likely to escalate to a world war, but definitely it will escalate to a localized, regional, limited war.
Well said, sir. The world isn't ready for a world war, which translates to a nuclear war. And a nuclear war means the end of this civilization as we know it. It will take us thousands of years back, like you said, and nothing will survive.
I hope it does not turn into that bad, and this solution is found, and there is peace in that region.
So we at Dive Publishers closely following the conflict, and we hope to bring more guests and you as well again and discuss the conflict again. This has been very insightful for me, sir. Learned so much, a lot of facts, a lot of things on the ground, and I'm sure the audience took a lot as well.
Thank you very much, Ram. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining, sir. We at TOAP are working really hard to take this podcast to the next level. Our guests are going to get even better, our production quality is going to get even better, and hopefully, I'm going to get even better too. Most importantly, we are committed to being consistent and continue to do what we love the most. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.